Hey everybody, welcome to Rewind Video. I'm Bob.
I'm Rob.
And we love movies. Good ones, bad ones, old ones, new ones, big movies, small movies. Rob, everyone has a different definition of fun. Am I right?
That's definitely true.
For some people, a fun evening is waltzing into Rewind Video on a Friday night, renting a movie they've never seen. For other folks, it's hosting a game night with friends. Tonight we're going to dive in.
You can combine those two.
You could.
Very easily.
Games, movies, one evening, lots of laughs. Well, tonight we're going to dive into the types of things people do to relax, unwind, have fun with this week's staff recommendations. You and I are in charge of stocking the staff recommendation shelf here at Rewind Video. Each time we choose a selection of films, we adhere to a theme, and this week's theme is fun and games. Your pick.
Yeah.
Right?
Games make everything better, right?
Games do. Yes.
Even if something's boring to do, if you turn it into a game, you can make it more fun to do.
Yes. You know, before I had my movies chosen for this, I was initially thinking, this is going to be easy. There's so many movies that fit this category. And then I became increasingly stressed out because every time I was zeroing in on a movie that felt like it fit, you know, yes, there might be fun that the characters are having in a movie, or yes, they might be playing games. But then there was an element of drama that was added to the story that somehow thwarted the fun or I don't know, changed the way you perceived it. And
well, honestly, I didn't necessarily require both fun and games in all of my choices.
I think I only have one where fun and games are both represented, but perhaps it's even questionable in that case.
Well, I mean, if a game is there, it's fun.
Right.
So, ergo, fun and games. I think having games in a movie is a good way to raise the stakes because now we have winning and losing on the table. Mm-hmm. So it makes some things way more interesting.
Yeah. There are a lot of horror movies that fit this category. I didn't choose one this week.
Yeah.
Steered clear of the horror genre, but not devoid of games gone scary. You know,
I think it's funny how you keep avoiding the horror genre, but keep finding movies where people eat other people.
Right. We're trying to throw our customers for a loop.
What about this week? Who knows?
There's nobody is going to get eaten this week, but there are some horrifying elements to at least one of my movies. Okay. Truly horrifying.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, no cannibalism. I'm really trying to steer clear of cannibalism in 2023. I got off to a rocky start, but for the rest of the year,
we're trending in the right direction.
Right. Yeah. So bear with me, and apologies for the streak of raw people meat. Yeah, I've got some stuff that I think might. I wouldn't blame you if you said I don't see a lot of fun in what you're describing, or the game element is tenuous, but it's here. I tried to approach this in terms of let's look at fun and games through some different lenses. Mm-hmm. Maybe bring some unexpected movies to the shelf, but excited about your picks. Excited to talk about mine. Why don't we dive in with your first choice?
Well, sometimes games can be fun for one party and not necessarily fun for another. And I think my first choice is a good illustration of that. I'm choosing Hard Target, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme.
The one and only.
From 1993. The theatrical release of this movie was 97 minutes, but the one we have here on the shelf, that's the 100-minute international cut.
Okay.
Yeah, this is directed by John Woo. He made a lot of Hong Kong gun fu movies, the most famous being The Killer, Hard Boiled, A Better Tomorrow.
And let's not forget Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah, well, I'm getting to that.
Okay, sorry.
Those are all stone cold action classics.
Yeah. Bangers.
They're a little hard to find these days. We do have them on the shelf, some of them in VHS. Mm-hmm. The DVD versions sometimes are hard to find / very terrible. But he moved to America and he made this movie, Hard Target, and then he made Broken Arrow, which is an excellent movie with Christian Slater and John Travolta. Then he moved on to Face Off, which is a super weird action movie.
He does a lot of movies with 2-word titles.
Yeah. I mean, it's an easy way to sell your movie.
Right.
I like all his first 3 American movies.
Sure.
To varying degrees. Mission Impossible 2, which you mentioned, was an interesting movie. I feel like it was pretty good for a while, and then like 30-40 minutes into the movie, like a fuse blew, and then all of a sudden, like John Woo didn't work in America anymore. Like
right.
something about it, like it's just suddenly his cinematic language is just like no longer relevant. Immediately. All of a sudden, there was a moment in that movie. It was just like, oh, sorry, this doesn't work.
I think you're being kind. I think this is a bad movie. Mission Impossible 2. I think it's a bad movie, especially compared to where we got with the Mission Impossible franchise.
Yeah,
the later ones.
I think I think it's generally a bad movie. I think there's some cool stuff in it. I think there's some cool looking stuff.
Yes.
I just think there's a point in that movie where it's just like it just stops working completely. But I think like the first part of it's okay. Mm-hmm. Anyway, here's the back of the box to Hard Target. When a woman's father goes missing, she enlists a local to aid in her search. The pair soon discover that her father has died at the hands of a wealthy sportsman who hunts homeless men as a form of recreation. Tagline: Don't hunt what you can't kill. This is an adaptation. Yeah, this is an adaptation of The Most Dangerous Game.
Right.
Apparently, I don't know. It seems like they just took the idea of hunting people and said, it's an adaptation.
Right.
I don't know what they took from from that. But it's about a human hunting operation in and around New Orleans. Trivia: Sam Raimi was on set of this movie. He was an executive producer and kind of the backup director because they didn't really know what was going to happen with John Woo.
Right. I would have liked to have seen the Sam Raimi version of this movie. Not that the John Woo one is bad.
No. I'm not sure that Sam Raimi was interested in making that movie. I think he was just there in case something went wrong. And his bosses were like, just do this, all right? Kurt Russell was the first choice to play this part.
Ooh, I think they ended up with a better guy.
I think, yeah. I mean, apparently it was a much different movie going into the Kurt Russell decision. Right. But because of scheduling, he couldn't do it. And so they got Jean-Claude Van Damme. And I think as a result of that, John Woo started adding a lot of these action scenes, which is weird because that's what he was known for.
Yes.
So it seemed it's strange that they'd be like, let's get John Woo, Kurt Russell, and not that much action. And like Jean-Claude Van Damme was the backup. I think they ended up with the right guy.
I agree. Especially when you look at Jean-Claude Van Damme's hair.
I mean, it's an amazing mullet.
It is. It's really good.
Greasy and super mullety.
So good.
I think this is Jean-Claude Van Damme at his absolute best.
I don't disagree. Hard to argue with that.
This is a situation where his accent actually kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
And usually in most of his movies, it's a Schwarzenegger situation where they just don't explain why this guy is speaking with his accent,
Yes. Yeah.
And I think he's actually pretty compelling as like a drifter dirtbag, which you don't often see with him.
Right.
And John Woo makes him look cool, which is kind of out of the ordinary for Jean-Claude Van Damme.
His entrance into this movie is phenomenal.
It's great. John Woo knows how to make people look cool, and like he has the skills to do it. It often involves birds. It usually involves guns.
Yeah, I mean, doves are a trademark of John Woo. You always see a dove fly out from somewhere.
There's a dove. There's lots of pigeons in this movie.
Yeah, I was going to say, the dove isn't the only bird that we get. We get a really interesting scene with Van Damme and a pigeon.
There's birds in Mission Impossible too, if you remember as well. But most of the characters get a really badass moment, including Lance Hendrickson getting lit on fire. And it's not a stuntman. He's on fire. It's actually him on fire. And of course, Jean-Claude Van Damme gets, in addition to the mullet, he gets mom jeans, which is great. He has a really cool duster, too, at some point.
Yeah.
But his martial arts style often comes across as show karate.
A lot of flips. Through fire.
I don't think there's a split in this movie.
There's not.
And it's very gymnastics-y, but not here. This is not a skills competition, which is like a lot of what his stuff is. Like it's fighting, it's action, and I kind of think that Jean-Claude Van Damme and John Woo are a perfect combination, and I wish they had worked together more often.
Yeah, it's a good pairing. It's a really good pairing.
Yeah, like Woo there's something in Jean-Claude's like athleticism and like that distant foreign quality
Yeah.
to his personality that John Woo can work with.
Yep.
But the action in this movie is incredible. The introduction scene that you mentioned, like it's a street fight and it fucking rules. It's a super violent fight, and the rest of this movie is very violent.
Extraordinarily.
I think that's the international cut. I believe they had to cut about 3 minutes out to get an R rating.
Really?
And so so the cut that we have, the international cut, you get a lot of blood. You get an arm broken in half, ears ripped off, teeth bashed out.
Yes.
You know, it's awesome. It's great. And then the stunts are great practical stunts. You got people jumping through the air shooting guns, of course. Jean-Claude Van Damme riding a horse being chased by a helicopter. Great scene.
Great scene.
And then there's an amazing stunt, maybe one of my favorite of all time, with JCVD on the motorcycle where he's going to the
Yes.
truck and then the motorcycle bashes into the truck. The stuntman like flips over the truck, lands on his feet. Lands on his feet.
Yeah.
And then the truck explodes.
Well, he pulls out a gun and he shoots.
He shoots the motorcycle. And that's only one of many of the spectacular explosions in this movie. That's something else like Broken Arrow, one of the best explosion movies of all time.
Gotta love a good explosion.
Yeah.
we got them. We got a lot of them in the 90s.
Yeah. And I think John Woo had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
But the bad guys in this movie are obviously they're bad guys, but they're not only bad dudes, but they're bad at what they do.
Yes.
They're bad at their business and they're bad at the game they're playing. Horrible business people. They have very poor customer relations. They treat their customers like employees all the time.
Yeah.
And they also kill their customers for no reason.
Yes.
But their human hunting operation is very shoddily run. Part of the operation is like some dude who gives flyers to homeless guys to hand out, and this guy's got like information on your hunting operation.
Right.
And like, by the way, if you get asked in a job interview if anyone in your life will notice if you go missing, that's a huge red flag.
Red flag. Yeah.
like
steer clear.
And that's what happens. This guy's like, hey, just before I give you the job, one quick question. Would anybody miss you if like you disappear off the face of the earth?
Yeah, because just in case you get really fully committed to this job and you just fall off the grid.
And like, I mean, if you're running this kind of a business, it has to be airtight. And they're not doing that.
No, they're literally hunting people in the streets of New Orleans, like on Bourbon Street.
Yeah, they're paying the cops off, yes, but like you still can't do that.
No.
The cops can't just be like, well, nothing happened here. You have thousands of witnesses.
Right.
But they also don't seem to have any interest in following the rules of this game.
No.
Like theoretically, they really don't have any outcome. Whether they don't have any interest in the outcome, whether or not the guy gets away from the hunters. But for some reason, they get pissed off when the guy is like, well, I don't want to shoot him. They should just be like, cool, that makes our job way easier. Nobody gets killed. But instead they're like, no, we have to make sure at least several people die here, including the guy that paid us for this. Like, that's not going to come back to haunt them somehow.
They're betting on themselves that nobody is going to survive. Because if somebody does survive, then all of this goes to shit. But yeah, it's a lot of questions here.
Yeah, but how do you need repeat customers? Or at least you need customers to tell other people, like, it was a great experience. I got to shoot a homeless man.
Yes.
You're not going to have those customers to bring in new customers if you kill them. Mm-hmm. Anyway, horrible business plan. We don't know where it goes from here. But
Right.
But yeah, Hard Target is top level Van Damme. It's one of John Woo's, if not his best American movie. It has great practical action, tons of shit blowing up, and features a very dangerous, some would say the most dangerous game. So I'm putting it on the staff shelf for fun and games.
Very fun pick. Very fun pick. There's two things that I want to talk about before we move on. One is that you failed to mention that there is a scene in this movie where Van Damme punches a snake to death.
He does.
And then bites off its tail.
Yes.
It's badass. It also, Wilford Brimley, I think is remarkable in this role, just for how weird he is.
I buy him. I buy him as a guy in the bayou or whatever.
Totally. Yeah, he's good. So it's very interesting that you chose this movie because I was considering bringing another human hunting movie to the table. The one that came out the following year, Surviving the Game, which
I wouldn't have been mad at that.
yeah, I almost regret not bringing it to the table or the shelf, as it were.
Yes.
Because between the two, I prefer Surviving the Game only because the operation is more airtight and they've clearly worked through the risks and things like that. But there's also some great performances from like Gary Busey and whatnot from there.
I will say, this is much more of like a better. It's better of a pure action movie.
Totally agree.
As far as like the hunting, the human hunting that's going on. Yeah, Surviving the Game is probably a better illustration of that. I will admit.
But what's great about this is you get Van Damme at his best.
Yes.
In spite of the fact that he doesn't give us a split, he's still phenomenal in this, and the action is great. Nobody does action quite like John Woo, even to this day.
I think the fact that he doesn't do the split makes it better. Because otherwise, you're just like, you're just like doing the tricks for us.
Yeah. Right. Well, I'm glad you brought it to the shelf. It's a good one to kick us off for fun and games. Yes, it's a winner indeed. Well, I'm going to jump a few years ahead, staying in the 90s, to 1998's Rounders. And I'm gonna go a little off script here and start things off with a Letterboxd review that I think sums up why I love this movie. So the Letterboxd user Norton Lover, perhaps a little bit biased, said this of Rounders: "Is it weird to call this a comfort movie?" My answer is no. I think this is absolutely a comfort movie. I've seen this countless times. I know you have too.
I've seen it at least 100 times.
We love this movie.
Yeah.
You turn it on and...
We've worn a hole in the DVD on the shelf here.
Yes. I say this is the type of movie, you just pour yourself a bourbon, sit back, let it take you for a ride.
Absolutely.
It's so good. Let me give you the back of the box for those who are unfamiliar. So... a young man is a reformed gambler who must return to playing big stakes poker to help a friend pay off loan sharks. Tagline: trust everyone, but always cut the cards. It's funny because my dad always said that to me when I was growing up. He said, trust everyone, but always cut the deck. So slight tweak on this tagline, but it was, familiar words of advice.
Did your dad work for a Hollywood studio?
He was a loan shark.
Oh, okay.
I think the back of the box here tells you everything you need to know. Matt Damon is our reformed gambler. Edward Norton is the friend who owes money to loan sharks. Supporting cast gives us Gretchen Mol as Damon's love interest, John Malkovich as a Russian who employs the loan shark chasing down Ed Norton. We also get John Turturro as Damon's friend. Martin Landau is here as the judge who Damon is studying under before he gets involved with Norton. So this comes right on the heels of Good Will Hunting. This was in post-production when Good Will Hunting was collecting Oscars at the Academy Awards. The gambling in this movie centers around Texas Hold'em. There's a couple other games that get played, but this is the movie that kind of introduced America to Texas Hold'em. And we were discussing before this episode kind of what came first: America's love for the game because World Series of Poker started showing up on ESPN and things like that, or the release of this movie. You have a take on this?
I mean, I think Rounders for sure caused the poker boom, or at least was the spark.
Yeah,
I think that maybe the fuel was out there, but this was definitely the spark that caused it.
It's interesting because this movie doesn't even really hold your hand as it relates to introducing you to poker. I mean, you can pick up what's going on and definitely make sense of the game that's being played, but they do a very brief kind of recap of how the game is played. But yeah, you definitely just have to learn the way the game is played as the movie unfolds. But it sure does make just the world of playing poker just feel fucking sexy and cool and fascinating.
It's fascinating, yeah.
I love the way that New York is depicted in this movie because, there's these underground poker clubs and back rooms where these games are being played and, country clubs and stuff like that have games. And maybe that world exists. I don't know.
It definitely exists.
Does it?
For sure.
I wish somebody would
introduce me to it. I'm not saying I've been
to
those games, but they exist.
Maybe we should Maybe we should clean out the closet here at Rewind Video and see if we can host something on like a Wednesday.
Yeah, no, if you do, I mean, I've been out of the poker world for, a while now, but if you do enough reading on stuff, like, and a lot of the poker players, you find out that like a lot of them do play these home games.
Yeah.
And they are people that like find their ways into these games and with these really rich people. And I used to play a lot of poker. I used to play nearly 40 hours a week. And you can, it's a grind, but like if you do it right and play with the right people, you can make some money.
Yeah.
And if you start getting into games with people that are like really rich, and like the thing you notice is when you play a lot of cards is there's people out there that just don't give a shit about losing a lot of money.
Right.
I've played with people that are not rich and they don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. And so like if you're willing to like put in the work, you can work your way into those mansion games and you can make, $20,000 in a night.
Well, the crowd that you're talking about definitely exists in this movie because, we see a lot of like serious poker players who are frequenting these clubs day in and day out. We also see, Norton and Damon going to these mansion games where people are like, whatever, it's money.
Yeah.
I just want to play cards. Mm-hmm. And so I like that. I also like that when you see poker being played in this, it's played in a realistic way. You compare it to your Casino Royales where James Bond is getting four of a kinds and royal flushes, and so different here. It's grounded in reality. It's people winning hands on a flush or occasionally a full house, maybe three of a kind.
We were just saying it seems like every time James Bond is involved in a poker hand, somebody's got a four of a kind.
Yes,
yes. That is not realistic.
Bananas,
obviously.
Bananas. So why did I choose this? I love this film. It's infinitely rewatchable. The casting is fucking perfect here. The performances are great. Tightly paced story. Of my three movies, this is the one for me that I feel like gives us a dose of both fun and games. Game is obviously Texas Hold'em. I think the fun comes during a particular scene when Damon's character is being summoned back into the poker world, and Edward Norton is kind of coaxing him to, hey, let's play some cards, and it's a pitch to go to Atlantic City, and he sells him on this evening of gambling with getting out of New York, playing cards, fleecing tourists, and
I want to go right now.
Yeah, exactly.
You just saying that makes me want to go.
Totally. And you see in that moment like a switch flips, and Damon's like, yeah, I fucking love this. This is why I've always enjoyed playing cards, and so
well, it's not about helping his friend out of a jam. I mean, it is.
Right, it is.
But once you get in on that action, it's hard to get out of it. And then when you get out of it, you kind of want to get back in on it.
Right.
I mean, the action is. I mean, it's invigorating.
It is, and a big theme of this movie is just listening to your calling. And Martin Landau's character talks to Damon a lot about that. And even though it's not as noble, quote noble, as becoming a lawyer, this is clearly what Damon's meant to be doing. So he decides to listen to that. Like we've already discussed, I've seen this countless times. I did pick up on something new upon this most recent rewatch, and I'm curious if you've seen this. I was struck by how often Edward Norton's character is littering in this movie.
I have not noticed.
Pay attention to it next time you watch, and to our customers, just keep an eye out for it. He's literally throwing toothpicks on the ground constantly. There's a hot dog wrapper that gets thrown on the ground, bloody napkins. I mean, there's half a dozen scenes where he's littering, and
that's
it almost feels like he built that into his character, but whatever.
I think the only part about this movie that I think is really weak is another throwaway thing. I think Gretchen Mall's character is just a complete throwaway character.
She doesn't need to be in it. Yeah.
I don't know. They just didn't give her anything to do. It's like one of those characters is like they just jammed this in here to be like, yeah, we got a woman in here too.
Yeah, right.
And it's really like awkward, and I think that's a real weak point in this movie. Otherwise, it's a stone cold classic.
I agree with you. I certainly agree on Gretchen Mall's character. There's one other thing that combined with her role keeps this from being a 5-star movie for me, and it's John Malkovich's Tell in this movie, which just strikes me as fucking absurd. And we don't need to reveal it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but for his for as true to poker as the rest of the film is, that just stands out as being like, really?
Yeah.
But otherwise, Malkovich is great. His shirts are fantastic. His accent, in spite of being over the top, is wonderful.
Tells are weird though. I was never a Tells guy, but
most people have them, I suppose. Yeah. So this, there was also talk that this was partially based on the life of Norm Macdonald. There's no evidence that that's true. I don't know where.
There's no way that's true.
There's no way that's true.
He was a bit of a degenerate gambler, but
Yeah.
he wasn't doing
This
this.
was
He didn't go to
his life.
law school.
No. So this clocks in at
Wait, did he? I don't think he did.
I don't think he did. No. This clocks in at a 3.5 on Letterboxd. Critical response somewhat mixed, but I'm here to say this is the best poker movie you can find in the store. It's outstanding.
It's fantastic.
It's going on the shelf. Rounders. Fun and games.
Excellent. All right. Okay, I'm going to move up to a fairly recent movie, 2018. This is, I think this movie's kind of a hidden gem. I think it's just one of those movies that really works for me. It's called Game Night, starring Rachel McAdams and Jason Bateman.
Right on.
This movie is directed by John Francis Daly and Jonathan M. Goldstein. They made the Vacation remake. Okay, here's the back of the box. A group of friends who meet regularly for game nights find themselves entangled in a real-life mystery when the shady brother of one of them is seemingly kidnapped by dangerous gangsters. Tagline, this is not a game.
No.
This is actually a situation where the title came first. A writer and a producer were having a meeting, and one of them was like, I had this idea for a title. It's called Game Night.
Really?
They're like, write this movie.
That's the story of how this
apparently.
Oh my goodness.
But I'm not mad about that because they built something that's a lot of fun around the title. The cast is having a blast, and I think they're all tremendous here. Our two leads are, like I said, Jason Bateman and Rachel McAdams. Bateman, I think, when he's doing comedy, especially something like Arrested Development or this, I think he's got like a Bob Newhart level straight man quality to him. You can bounce anything off of him.
Yeah, he's very good. For me, he's kind of one note, but that note hits.
But I think you could say the same thing about Bob Newhart, but I think that's part of the charm.
Yeah.
McAdams is great here too. She has like a really high comedic energy, but it's always like completely under control. It doesn't seem goofy or outlandish in any way. It seemed very real. Supporting cast is superb as well. Kyle Chandler is like the smarmy Wall Street douchebag. Billy Magnuson is hilarious as an idiot.
He is good.
But like not overdone. He seems like a real idiot.
Yes,
like people I know act like that. I know several people that act like that. Right. Then there's the couple that have been together since they were 14. They bring a lot of like real couple energy.
They do.
I've always thought that's weird. Like people who got together when they're teenagers.
Yeah, and I don't want to offend any of our listeners, but boy, I find that weird too.
Yeah, and I have some friends who are married to people that they dated in high school.
Sure.
But they haven't been together since high school.
Right.
But there are people that have been together since high school. And in this movie, and granted, these aren't real people, but 14, can you imagine?
No, I can't.
Can you imagine? But in my opinion, I think it's Jesse Plemons who kind of steals the show here. He's doing something in this movie that is just completely wild. It's not no energy. It's like anti-energy.
Oh yeah, he sucks the energy out of a scene. I mean, because of his the way his character is created.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
and it doesn't seem like he's going to be able to pull it off for a whole movie, but he sells it so hard that it goes all the way to the end, and you're like, I didn't think he could do it, but he does it, and I think it's kind of impressive.
I remember being introduced to Jesse Plemons with Breaking Bad, and you felt like this guy is a phenomenal actor. And even to this day, I don't feel like I've seen something that uses him to his fullest ability yet.
Yeah.
He's great in a lot of things, including this, but I'm waiting for the movie that lets him just steal the show.
And it turns out he's like the villain of this movie for a lot of it until like a real villain comes in later. Mm-hmm. But I think the filmmaking here is really stylish. It's energetic. It's never gimmicky or distracting. It really jibes with the rest of the movie. It's a comedy, yes, but to me this is like a complete movie all the way around. The story and the plot totally work on their own. I think it would have worked fine as a thriller if you changed the casting and a few of the parts of the script. I think you could easily make this a thriller. The comedy is like not improv style, which is like a lot of stuff. Like this is very tight and scripted.
Yeah, very scripted.
And I think the way they make the movie, I think the filmmaking captures that sharpness.
Yeah.
It's maybe a little bit too twisty at the end, maybe just a pinch, but like, isn't that part of the fun? Like, aren't games always just a little bit more complicated than they need to be?
Right.
And I think the soundtrack is excellent. It's very Fincherian.
Yes.
It gives it that darkness that the movie needs. But overall, I think what Game Night does is it fully embraces the game ethos. It understands game players. It understands game playing. It understands the game night experience. Even the snacks get proper treatment, in my opinion. They don't get very much screen time.
I would even say, so you make a good point. The snacks are great, but the culture of game night is a unique thing. People, you're very careful about who you invite to game night, and deliberate about the games that are played. And it's, for people who do a game night on a regular basis, I think that they're going to watch this and be like, somebody gets me.
Yeah, because I think it's very specific, but it's also not specific in a way where it's like, this is how you do game night. It's very specific in a way that's like, everybody's got their own way to do game night, and this is how they do it. And it feels very real and very lived in. So yeah, I mean, this is a 3.5 on Letterboxd. I think it earns all of those stars, in my opinion. I think it's a movie that understands games. It understands game night. It's funny. It's exciting. It's great to watch in a group, either before or after game night starts.
I agree.
And I can't imagine a Fun and Games staff shelf without this movie, so I'm putting it up there.
Well, listen, there's a lot to love about this, and I don't disagree with most of what you said. I got to be honest. I bounced off this one a little bit. I've seen it a couple times now, and I think it's more me than it is the movie. The first time I watched this, it felt like, and maybe this is supported by the way that you said that this movie was created. It felt to me like the writers had a series of scenes that they thought would be funny to see in a movie, and then found a way to string them together. But that said, it's an original story, and they're doing some fun stuff here. So I don't dislike it. It is a 3-star movie for me, and as we've talked about many times, that's there's a home for that.
It's a very strong 4-star movie for me. Maybe one day it'll be 5 stars. I think, but I do think you're right. Like, it does seem like a little bit like a engineered in a way, but to me, the way they put it together, it's just one of those movies that it just completely works. Yeah, I love all the characters. I love all the actors. I love every scene. Like, it just totally works for me. So
it's very elegantly shot. You mentioned it was stylish.
It's well made.
Yeah, there's some stuff here that feels like they were trying to find a way to channel board games and in how they shot this, and
even some of the visuals. It's like they even have shots where like all the characters are game pieces,
miniature,
and the whole world is a game board.
Yeah, it's fun. It's well done. So I support its inclusion on the shelf. In fact, it makes perfect sense for tonight's theme. So glad you put it up there.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm going into 2018 with my second choice. So I'm going with Uncut Gems. Uncut Gems.
Excellent.
I imagine that several of our customers have seen this. It was making some waves in 2020. I'm sorry, Uncut Gems was 2019. So a year later. But yeah, this was definitely in the same era. All right, back of the box synopsis for this one. A charismatic New York City jeweler, always on the lookout for the next big score, makes a series of high-stakes bets that could lead to the windfall of a lifetime. Howard must perform a precarious high-wire act, balancing business, family, and encroaching adversaries on all sides in his relentless pursuit of the ultimate win. Tagline, "This is how I win."
Oh, is it?
Is it?
I don't know.
Yeah. So this is one of the most stressful, anxiety-inducing movies I've ever seen. And
you're right about that.
Yeah, when I feel stressed about anything, I can put this on and think to myself, well, it could be a lot worse.
This movie doesn't stress me out as much as I'm just like, dude, just fucking slow down and fix one of your problems.
Any one of them.
Just fix one.
Oh,
and just,
I know.
Like, turn your phone off, fix one of your problems, and then move on with your life.
Then move on. Yes. Yes, I could not agree more. And we'll get into that in a moment. But so this sees Adam Sandler in a dramatic role. I think this is Adam Sandler's best movie.
I think he's great in this.
He's so fucking good. It's one of those things where it's like, wow, who knew that this guy had the ability to channel drama the way that he does here. He's fucking great. We also get Lakeith Stanfield, a surprising turn from Kevin Garnett playing himself. He wanted to get into acting, and I'm glad that he showed up in this because he's awesome. The Weeknd also plays himself. Idina Menzel is in this. Eric Bogosian, Julia Fox. This was directed by the Safdie brothers. The only other feature that they had directed prior to this was Good Time, which is also worth a watch.
How did that Kevin Garnett getting into acting thing work out?
I don't know. Did it work? Oh, not great.
Doesn't seem like it.
I wasn't sure if there was maybe a whole shelf of Kevin Garnett movies.
Maybe,
he might have some stuff.
I don't recall that.
Who knows? So Sandler plays the character of Howard Ratner. So he's the jeweler that owes a ton of money to a ton of people. He's addicted to gambling, consistently making the worst decisions possible to feed his addiction. That means borrowing money against other people's property in order to place bets. He's dodging collectors, selling fake jewelry. That's really just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh my God. Yeah, this guy, and like, the thing is, like, you can like make justifications for everything he's doing on its own, right? Like, if he was only like doing one of these things, you could be like, okay, like, I can see how you can make it work.
Right.
But there's no way you can juggle all of these balls.
No. And you can't. I mean, like,
obviously not.
That's kind of the story of the movie. But, you know, I maybe you're right that one at a time you could make this work. But I honestly feel like every decision that Howard makes in this movie is the wrong one. Like, every fucking one of almost. It's just. Oh God, they're just very stressful.
Yeah, this is like he's one of those guys that, like, if he was in my family, if he was my brother, I would just be like, I can't. Like, I'll see him twice a year, you know, and just deal with it. But like, it's just, I can't deal. Even watching a movie with him.
Yes, he is the type of person that would drive me to stage an intervention and sit him down and be like, we got to talk. Based on everything that we've said, you can draw the conclusion that fun is largely absent from this story.
It's exhausting.
Yes, but games are indeed present. So Howard is a sports bettor, and the climax of this movie especially sees him place an outrageous parlay bet on the Celtics. But I do want to kind of talk about whether or not this experience, everything that we described of juggling all these balls and making these crazy bets, is fun for Howard. Because my most recent rewatch, I found myself asking that question. Because, yes, this man suffers from an addiction. And in spite of how awful the situation is that he puts himself in, you can't help but to wonder, does Howard enjoy what he's doing to himself?
I think the answer is definitely no. And I think it's even to the point where, like, it's not even a game anymore for him. Like, I think the gambling is not even like, you know, there's no enjoyment for it, but also, like, it's to feed something else that has nothing to do with games. You know, like, yes, he's playing this, he's gambling, which is gaming, right? But like, yeah, he's taken it to another level, which is just like down this dark path that is not even, it's barely even games anymore.
Yeah, you know, he's definitely making these bets to rescue, in an attempt to rescue himself from this awful situation that he's put himself in.
Which he could do many times by doing nothing.
right. Or just handling one thing at a time.
Just handling
one thing at a time. Yeah. But yeah.
I feel like this movie was possibly financed by a meditation app. Just to be like, it's like a 2-hour...
brought to you by Calm.
Yeah, advertisement for like mindfulness or whatever.
Right. Yeah, you know,
this is how bad it could get.
You can't help but to wonder. I mean, things spiral out of control for Howard really quickly. I mean, they're already spiraling when the movie begins, but they spiral further. I wonder if, you know, if this movie had ended in a different way, and Howard does hit a bet at the end of this movie, and then things turn very sour for Howard.
But it doesn't help.
It doesn't help. But I wonder if in a world where Howard's story could continue, would he stop after hitting this giant bet? My answer is no, he wouldn't, but he could. This bet that he wins could solve all of his problems. And
Yes.
And yet he's the type of person that would definitely continue.
He's not trying to solve his problems.
No.
That's why he's not solving them. He's trying to. He's like we were talking about with Rounders. Is like once you get jacked into that action, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter if you win or lose.
Yeah.
What matters is you're just part of the action. It's like
yes.
It's like what was his name? Artie Lang. Mm-hmm. When he was talking about gambling one time, he's like, "You want to feel alive?" He's like, "Put $10,000 on a football game when you've got $1,000 in your bank account."
Yeah.
It's not about winning the money; it's about feeling something. You know, and that's what's happening to this guy.
Yeah, he does seem to be driven by just exhilaration, and he's thrilled when Kevin Garnett shows up in his shop, and just to be kind of like very, very, very tangentially connected to this world of celebrity culture and things. But it's a pretty tragic story. I will say, so this movie is not completely detached from fun. I find this type of movie-going experience to be fun to the nth degree. Yeah. When a script, directors, and a cast can come together in a way that creates genuine suspense, the kind that makes your palms sweat, that's fun for me. So I know the movie, there isn't a lot of fun happening, but there is a lot of fun watching it if you're the type of moviegoer like me who appreciates seeing this kind of suspense on screen. No movie delivers quite like this one in that respect for me. I also think there's some great art direction in this movie. Everything from Howard's jewelry store, which was a set built specifically for the film, to the houses, the apartments the characters occupy, their clothes. It's so true to this world.
Yeah. It's a great world building movie.
Oh yeah.
You really get a sense of what it's like in these jewelry shops. Which, I mean, it's not a world I traffic in, so like maybe it's accurate, maybe it's not, but it seems real. It
does seem real. In fact, I think they cast some real jewelers from this scene for the movie. But yeah, definitely felt authentic. This sits at a 3.9 on Letterboxd, pretty universally adored by critics and audiences alike. There was a user by the name of Jim Cummings who said of this movie, "These boys used every part of the buffalo. It's nonstop, perfectly executed insanity. I had to walk around my neighborhood for an hour just to think about it all. I fell in love with every actor. So good." Yeah, so I think that sums it up great. The Safdie brothers just knocked it out of the park. I can't wait to see what they do next.
Yeah, it's a modern classic, maybe.
I agree. So on the shelf for games more than fun, but
it fits.
Up it goes.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to move way back. I'm going to take us back to 1957.
Oh boy.
To a movie called The Seventh Seal.
Love it.
Written and directed by the great Ingmar Bergman. Here's the back of the box. A knight returning to Sweden after the Crusades seeks answers about life, death, and the existence of God as he plays chess against the Grim Reaper during the Black Plague. This is, and has been for a long time, universally regarded as one of the best films of all time. It's usually you'll see it like in the top 5, maybe top 10 for sure. So nobody necessarily needs me to tell them to check it out, but if you haven't, I recommend it.
Yeah, this is the movie. This is the type of movie that I think a lot of people from the modern generation might have watched during film school, but you wouldn't necessarily pluck it off the shelf unless you're looking for it. So
I didn't come to it until 2020. I didn't see it until very recently. It definitely hits hard in the midst of a global pandemic. But yeah, I think it's one of those movies that it's almost the stereotypical like old foreign film that you go to see like an old art house that like your parents or somebody, you only watch if you're like in college or whatever.
Right, yeah.
But I think it's much more than that. I think it's a movie that you should definitely go back and check out. There's almost no plot. What it lacks in plot is more than made up for in its story. Max von Sydow. Do you say Sydow or Sydow?
I say Sydow.
Okay, Max von Sydow's character, he does manage to drag his chess game out with death for the length of the movie, which I think is like a commendable.
Right.
But the movie's broken up into like almost vignettes of his trip home. It's very much a people talking movie about very ponderous and profound stuff. I know that sounds very slow and boring. It's a movie from the 50s. It's Swedish. It's people playing chess with death and talking about the meaning of life.
Yeah.
But for a movie about death, this is astoundingly full of life.
I agree.
The cast is fantastic. I'm not going to mention anybody besides Max von Sydow because I can't even like pronounce most of their names, but you've never heard of them. But they're amazing. They all have an incredible screen presence. The fact that it's in Swedish, it doesn't hinder it at all. The humor comes across. Everything the actors are doing gets translated to the screen. It's just so alive.
It is. And I mean, ultimately, it's a movie about how death is coming for everyone.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, but in spite of that, yeah, definitely it invigorates you.
Yeah. So Max von Sydow, he's having an existential crisis, and for good reason. I think, as we've talked about before with, what was the Crusades movie, the Ridley Scott?
Kingdom of Heaven.
Kingdom of Heaven, yeah. Like, there doesn't seem to be any good reasons for the Crusades to have happened.
Right.
It's kind of like Vietnam times 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's figured this out. He's coming back from the Crusades, and he's returning home after spending a decade of his life watching his friends die for no reason. And now he's coming back home to a homeland ravaged by plague.
You know, I gotta ask, and I don't have an answer to this question. I'm curious if you do. We've seen several movies that deal in the Crusades, and there's this persistent theme of the knights who are part of it leaving or being a part of it, thinking, "What am I doing? There's no point to this." And I can't help but to wonder if that's a modern commentary on the Crusades, where we can look back now and say, "This was fucking pointless," or if that was truly something that people felt at the time, because I don't know, religion and people's faith were different then than they are today. And
True, but I think they also. Who are we to say what happened?
No.
If I had to say, it seems like they didn't seem to accomplish anything, right?
No.
And so that had to be obvious to the people who were involved.
I would think
At least
so.
to some of the people who were involved. But who are we to say it happened a long fucking time ago?
It sure
so,
did.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's coming home and like he's trying to figure out like what life's all about. Why are we here? What is the point of all this? Like if it's going to be this bad, right? So, but I think he's given some reasons on his trip. To me, the high point of this movie is when he's sitting on that hillside with the young family eating strawberries and with milk. And even, Max von Sydow was like, "Is there anything better than this?"
Right.
And it's an amazing moment, but I don't think he even realizes that the answer is kind of no. It's like just kind of,
Yeah. Yeah.
But like you said, death comes for us all. And there really is no point to life if you think about it.
Right.
But realizing that there's no point kind of is the point.
Yeah.
And accepting that is what's important.
I agree. The first time I saw this, it made me think I'm not spending enough time with lute players in my life because I think I'd be happier if I was.
Or jugglers.
Or jugglers. Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, this is a 4.3 on Letterboxd. It deserves, in my opinion, it's a 5-star movie. I think for a lot of people, it's a 5-star movie.
Yeah.
It's one of the greats for a reason. It asks big questions. It's gorgeous. It's a movie about death that nonetheless has an exuberance throughout and has probably the most famous chess match in history.
Oh, I gotta think so.
Yeah, so I'm putting it on the shelf for fun and games.
I feel like this movie is the reason the Criterion Collection exists.
Yeah.
It's
It's like the quintessential Criterion Collection.
yeah.
Foreign greatest movie of all time that you've never seen type of thing.
And to anyone who's intimidated by foreign film from the 50s, lofty themes, this is a 90-minute movie.
Yeah, it's
Goes by in a
96.
breeze.
96.
Yeah.
And at no
Yeah.
point does it drag.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's worthy of your time. I'm glad you brought it up. Well, I'm going to round things out with a new release. We're going to the new release shelf,
right.
and my final pick is Triangle of Sadness, which it definitely feels like. From the title alone, you might think, "Wow, we're getting further and further away from fun." And
None of this sounds like fun or games.
But I think there's a really interesting commentary on fun with this movie. So let's give the back of the box first. So models Carl and Yaya are invited for a luxury cruise with a rogues gallery of super rich passengers. At first, all appears Instagrammable, but the cruise ends catastrophically and the group find themselves marooned on a desert island. Rob, are you familiar with the term goblin mode?
Yeah.
You've heard of it? Yeah.
Apparently, it was like one of the word of the year.
Oxford English Dictionary chose it as the word of the year. So,
I'm always up on the Oxford news.
right. So, for anyone who's not familiar with goblin mode, the way that Oxford defines it is a type of behavior which is unapologetically self-indulgent, lazy, slovenly, or greedy, typically in a way that rejects social norms or expectations. So,
we used to just say you're a slob.
right, yeah.
Now we got to have a lot more syllables.
Yeah. I think there's an interesting glimpse at what goblin mode might look like in Triangle of Sadness. So pure coincidence. I didn't choose this because it was, had some parallels with the word of the year, but I couldn't help but to think about that as I was watching this. Here's perhaps an easier way to understand what you're getting with Triangle of Sadness. So there's a show on Bravo called Below Deck, which follows the crew of a super yacht while they host guests, for a week of vacationing in some exotic place. If you've ever watched a show and thought to yourself, fuck each and every one of these people on this boat, then this movie is for you. So Triangle of Sadness is directed by Ruben Ostlund. It's his English language debut. Customers might know him from Force Majeure in 2014.
Wow.
That was later remade with Will Ferrell and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, but the original is quite good.
So would you say the Swedes are big fans of games?
They might be. They might be. If nothing else, fun, perhaps. So this movie takes place in 3 acts. Our first act follows the 2 lead characters, both of whom are fashion models, as they kind of navigate the dynamics of their relationship. Act 2 takes us to that luxury cruise where the 2 models are among guests and a whole host of extremely rich vacationers. It's on the yacht that things go horribly wrong, leading to a 3rd act where the guests have to deal with the aftermath and they're marooned on an island. So where do fun games fit in? Well, this luxury cruise is supposed to be fun for everyone who's on board. And for a short time it is, in a pretty kind of cringy way.
Yeah. That seems like that's what cruises are.
Yeah.
Like, it seems fun.
It does
It's
seem
not.
fun. It does seem fun. There's this interesting dynamic on this boat where the staff are instructed, you're dealing with not just the 1%, but the 0.01%. Like, these
Okay.
people are extremely affluent. And so, like, whatever they ask for, your answer is yes. And, if it's illicit drugs, we'll find it.
Now, they're on a boat?
They're on a boat.
It's hard to find. If it's not on the boat, you can't get it.
Well, yeah. In any case, there is a scene where, like, one of the guests is kind of pontificating on, like, living life spontaneously, and she says to one of the crew members, like, why don't you just get in the pool with me? Just get in the pool. And the crew member's like, no. And then that spirals into, like, that guest insists that every member of the entire boat, every crew member, must go down the water slide, and it's just stuff like that. That's super cringy. But yeah, things kind of go sideways during the captain's dinner of this cruise, where the ship encounters some rough water, and everybody on board becomes graphically seasick during dinner. There's maybe 20 minutes of this movie devoted to vomiting and shit and just people falling downstairs.
That's a lot.
It is a lot, yeah. While this happens, when things are seemingly horrible, we get Woody Harrelson, who is the captain of this boat. He plays like a drunken recluse, and he's all in. He's having a great time. He's getting drunk with one of the guests, and they get on the microphone and talk about socialism and capitalism, and they're having a great time. Anyway, yeah, I think this takes us back. For me, the reason I chose this is because it takes us back to what we kind of started talking about at the beginning of the episode. Everybody has a different definition of fun. You get to see some very different depictions of fun taking place in this movie. And I also like the fact that it's just an indictment of the super, super rich. If
Do you think it's harder for them to have fun?
I don't think it's harder for them to have fun. I think that fun for them is something that just makes me want to throw up my middle fingers and and to see things go south.
It's weird that if you have so much money, that like you can do anything. It's almost like, well, then I don't want to do anything. Mm-hmm. It's a weird dichotomy.
I agree. Yeah, and you look at this experience
because I have that experience. Obviously, this podcast is very successful. I know what I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah, you see this boat that they're on, and you can't help but to think like, wow, these people don't seem to be appreciating like this extraordinary experience that they're getting to enjoy.
Like if you're a billionaire, can you enjoy just like sitting on a hillside eating some strawberries
listening to a lute player and a juggler?
Yeah, with these poor people, like probably not.
Probably not. And I think that's a little bit of what this movie is about. Yeah. I think it's skewering that crowd of people and the very narrow portion of the world that they live in. Mm-hmm. This sits at a 3.9 on Letterboxd. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, which is it's a second of Oslin's movies to do so. He's won it before. There's a user by the name of Dakota Joaquin on Letterboxd who said of this movie makes fun of literally every single major political affiliation and social demographic, and I love it. And
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and so fun, you get a little bit of it in a few different ways. Making fun, you get a lot of it, and for that reason, I'm throwing it on the shelf for fun and games.
Excellent. What a shelf.
Yeah, really diverse.
I gotta say, this episode has been fun.
I think so too.
I don't feel like we play a lot of games, but that's good. We don't play games with our customers.
Yeah. No, and I think
have fun with them.
I think that if our customers knew that the theme was fun and games, they might think, "Oh, well, there's gonna be some sports movies up there."
We already did that.
We've conquered sports.
We've done the sports thing.
Yeah, we have. So I think there's a great collection of things. Something for everyone.
Absolutely.
Something for everyone. Well, listen, as always, thanks for paying a visit to Rewind Video. This week, the staff recommendation shelf is stocked with 6 fun films that deal in all sorts of different ways to spend your free time or unwind. Yeah. So,
fun games. This is your leisure time. Do what you want.
Do what you want. Hunt some people. Play some cards.
Don't do that.
Anyway, the films we chose are Hard Target, Rounders, Game Night, Uncut Gems, Seventh Seal, and Triangle of Sadness.
You can find us on all the social networks, basically, so like, subscribe, and whatnot. Also, get on our mailing list at rewindvideopod.com, and if you like the show, be kind. Recommend it to a friend.
That does it for this week's episode. Next time, tune in as we tackle vehicle performances.
Ooh.
That's going to be interesting, right?
Hopefully.
Cars, trucks, planes, motorcycles, things like that. As always,
horses
are vehicles. Maybe this is our opportunity to talk about Warhorse.
Maybe we should just do a horse episode. We'll stick with vehicles for now.
For now, yes. As always, we'll have 6 movies to recommend, but of course, we're always interested in what you think. So don't hesitate to hit us up on social. In the meantime, feel free to stop by the counter for a movie to watch, and we will see you next time.
Hail Satan.
Hail Satan.